Good morning, students. In the previous class, I discussed about the basic anatomy of the lacrimal apparatus and the basic histology of the tear film. So, what is lacrimal apparatus? It is a set of tissues which concern with the tear formation and transport. It starts with the lacrimal gland, then conjunctival sac, then lacrimal puncti, then lacrimal canaliculi, lacrimal sac, and nasal lacrimal duct. So the lacrimal gland, which is present at the supralateral part of the orbit, which is present here. From there, the lacrimal aqueous lacrimal gland secretion are entered into the conjunctival sac. Then they enter into the small orifice called puncti. Then to the small tube-like structures called canaliculi, which unite to form a common canaliculus. And they enter into the lacrimal sac and finally into the nasal lacrimal duct, which opens at the inferior meatus. Here at the junction of the common canalicles, we have a small valve called valve of Rosenmuller, which prevents the backflow of tears into the conjunctival sac. And at the distal end of the nasal lacrimal duct, we have another valve called valve of Husner, which prevents the blowing of air from nose into the lacrimal sac. So these two walls you have to remember. Coming to the tear film, what are the layers of the tear film? It consists of 3 layers. From posterior to anterior, posteriorly starts with the mucus layer, which is secreted by goblet cells of conjunctiva, and middle layer is aqueous layer, which forms the main bulk of the tear film. This mucus layer main function is to stabilize the tear film and to convert the hydrophobic nature of the cornea into the hydrophilic nature. And this aqueous layer consists of immunoglobulins, which has the property of anti-infective nature, and the upper superficial layer is a lipid layer, which is secreted from the meibomian glands. So in the previous class, I discussed about these topics. Now today I will discuss about watering eye and dry eye. Both are quite opposite topics. I will start with the watering eye. Then I will discuss dry eye. So what is watering of eye? It is the overflow of tears from the eyes. So it is because of 2 reasons. First one is hyperlacrimation, that is the increased secretions from the lacrimal gland. And second one is epiphora, which is due to inadequate drainage of the lacrimal passages. The lacrimal passages includes puncti, canaliculi, lacrimal sac, and nasal lacrimal. Because of the inadequate drainage of the normally secreted tears, we call it as epiphora. If there is increased secretion from the lacrimal gland, that we call it as a hyperlacrimation. These are the 2 reasons for the overflow of tears or watering of eyes. So I will start with the hyperlacrimation. There are 3 types of hyperlacrimations are present. First one is a primary hyperlacrimation. It is due to direct stimulation of the lacrimal gland. So because of the direct stimulation of the lacrimal gland, it secretes more amount of aqueous fluid, thereby increasing the amount of water in the eye. And second one is reflex hyperlacrimation. It is due to reflex stimulation of the lacrimal glands, because it is supplied by sensory branch fifth nerve. Due to irritation of the cornea and conjunctiva, there is a reflex hyperlacrimation. It is supplied by the fifth cranial nerve, that we call it as a reflex hyperlacrimation. And third one is central hyperlacrimation. It is the CNS is involved here. It is seen in case of emotional states. That is, in case of very happiness or very sadness, there is some watering in the eyes. That is due to central hyperlacrimation, or it may be due to voluntary action, or maybe due to hysterical involvement. These are the 3 types of hyperlacrimation. First one is primary, where lacrimal gland is involved. Second one is reflex hyperlacrimation, where there is an increase in stimulation of the fifth nerve because of the irritation of the cornea. In cases of conjunctivitis or in case of corneal ulcer, there is increased sensation of the fifth cranial nerve, thereby leads to reflex hyperlacrimation. Any inflammatory condition of the cornea and conjunctiva leads to reflex hyperlacrimation. And in case of central hyperlacrimation, the CNS is involved. This is seen in case of emotional states and voluntary lacrimation and hysterical lacrimation. So second cause for the watering of eyes, epiphora. It is due to inadequate drainage of the lacrimal passages. It may be physiological or anatomical. Physiologically, it is due to lacrimal pump failure. And anatomically, it is because of obstruction at the level of obstruction in the lacrimal passage. It may be at the level of punctum or canaliculi or lacrimal sac. So coming to the physiological epiphora, it is due to failure of the lacrimal pump due to lower lid laxity or weakness of the orbicularis muscle. For the normal functioning of the lacrimal pump, we should have the patient should have a strong auricularis muscle action. How? Because of the contraction of the auricularis muscle. Here in this picture, you can see that this is the open eye. In the open eye state, there is a contraction of the pretarsal fibers of the auricularis muscle. Because of the contraction of the pretarsal fibers of the auricularis muscle, the puncti and canaliculi are in the open state. So that whatever the fluid, whatever the tears which is secreted from lacrimal sac collects in the conjunctival sac, lacrimal gland collects in the lacrimal sac, and they enter through puncti into the canaliculi. Because of the contraction of the pretarsal fibers of the orbicularis muscle, the canaliculi are in the open state, so that from the lacrimal gland, the tears enters into the canaliculi through the puncti. Then, due to contraction of the preseptal fibers of the auricularis muscle, there is a from the canaliculi, because of the contraction of the preseptal fibers of the auricularis muscle, there is a expansion of the lacrimal sac, so that whatever the tears which collected at the canaliculi will, because of the negative pressure, enters into the lacrimal sac. So what happens, because of the contraction of the pretarsal fibers of the auricularis muscle, the tears enter into the canaliculi, and due to contraction of the preseptal fibers of the auricularis muscle, it enters into the lacrimal sac. When the eyes are closed, there is a relaxation of the pretarsal fibers of the auricularis muscle. Thereby, it causes narrowing of the canalicular tubes. Because of the relaxation of the contraction of the pretarsal fibers opens the canaliculi, and relaxation of the pretarsal fibers leads to closing of the canaliculi. Because of the closing of the canaliculi, the fluid which is present, which enters into the lacrimal sac, and in the same way, because of the relaxation of the preseptal fibers of the auricularis muscle, the lacrimal sac contracts. The expansion of the lacrimal sac decreases, and this creates the positive pressure, so that whatever the tears which collected in the lacrimal sac enter into the nasolacrimal duct, and they come out through the opening at the nasolacrimal duct into the inferior meatus. So this normal functioning of the auricularis muscle is important in case of normal functioning of the lacrimal pump. So this is how lacrimal pump functions. So in case of old age, there is a lower lid laxity, and then because of the weakness of the auricularis muscle, there is a failure of the lacrimal pump. This leads to physiological epiphora. There is inadequate drainage of the tears from the lacrimal passages, and this leads to physiological epiphora. Whereas in case of anatomical, the obstruction may present at any site. It may present at the puncti or at the canaliculi or lacrimal sac or nasolacrimal duct. So these are the two types of epiphora. The anatomical, it is because of the obstruction, mechanical obstruction, which is present at any site of the lacrimal passage. So coming to the causes, based on the site, different causes are there. If it is a punctal causes, it may be due to eversion of the lower punctum. Eversion is nothing but the outward turning of the punctum. What happens if the punctum is turned outside? It doesn't faces the pool of tears, so that it is faced outside. So the opening is not quite opposite to the tears, so that there is a decreased drainage of tears into the canaliculi. This eversion of lower punctum is seen in case of old age because of the lid laxity or due to continuous chronic conjunctivitis and blepharitis. And other punctal causes are punctal obstruction. It may be congenital or acquired. Congenital, it may be due to absent puncti or due to cicatricial closure, because following trauma or due to chemical or thermal injuries, there is a closure of the puncti that also leads to inadequate drainage, or due to some lodgement of the foreign body into the puncti, or due to, like here you can see the hair follicle which lodged into the puncti. So this closes the puncti, that leads to inadequate drainage. And use of certain drugs like pilocarpine and hydroxyurea also leads to closure of the puncti. These are the causes of epiphora due to obstruction at the punctal level. Next one is canaliculi. If it also may be due to congenital or acquired. Congenital causes are due to congenital stenosis, and acquired causes are same like in the punctate because of the trauma or due to lodgement of the foreign body. A strictures is nothing but following the chemical or thermal injuries. There is a narrowing of the canalicular tubes, and maybe due to inflammation of the canaliculi. So these are the causes of obstruction in the canaliculi. So what is the treatment of canalicular obstruction? If it is a partial canalicular obstruction, we intubate a tube stents called silicone stents through one or both the caniculi, and they are left for about 3 to 6 months. If it is a partial canalicular obstruction. If it is a total canalicular obstruction, there is a procedure called conjunctivo-dichocysterinostomy, where we insert special tubes called Lester-Jones tubes. This is how we treat the canalicular obstruction. So coming after canalicular, next part is lacrimal sac. What are the different causes for obstruction of lacrimal sac? It may be congenital or acquired. Congenital, it is because of presence of mucous membrane folds, or acquired, it may be due to trauma, maybe post-perforating trauma or chemical injuries, or due to inflammation of the lacrimal sac, that we call it as a dacryocystitis, or due to presence of stones in the lacrimal sac, that we call it as a dacrylithiasis, and due to presence of tumors in the lacrimal sac. These are the causes of obstruction at the level of lacrimal sac. The dacryocystitis may be of acute in nature or chronic in nature. Here, this is a picture of dacryocystitis, where we can see all the inflammatory signs like swelling, redness in this patient. And these are the stones which are extracted out from the lacrimal sac. That stones present in the lacrimal sac, we call it as a dacryolyths. So what are the next after lacrimal sac? What is the next part? That is a nasal lacrimal. What are the nasal lacrimal duct causes? It also may be due to congenital or acquired. The congenital causes are due to non-canalization of the nasal lacrimal duct, or due to partial canalization, or due to presence of imperforated membrane walls. And acquired causes are because of the strictures. Strictures are nothing but the narrowing of the tubular structures. It may be post-trauma or post-inflammatory diseases, or due to presence of tumors and surrounding the tumors of the nasal lacrimal duct or surrounding bones, are due to idiopathic stenosis. These are the nasal lacrimal duct causes. So this is the various causes of anatomical causes of epiphora. So basically, the epiphora is because of inadequate drainage of the lacrimal passages. It is of two types. It may be physiological or anatomical. Physiologically, it is due to lacrimal pump failure, and anatomically it is because of obstruction at the different levels of the lacrimal passage. It may be at the level of punctum or canaliculi or lacrimal sac or nasal lacrimal duct. Lacrimal pump failure is because of the weakness of the orbicularis muscle. It is mainly seen in case of bold days, where there is a lid laxity is present, and mechanical obstruction, it may be due to congenital or acquired. Acquired, in case of acquired, the main reasons are post-inflammatory and post-trauma, and in case of tumors, the main causes of obstruction, acquired causes of obstruction of the lacrimal passages. So this is the two types of epiphora. So how will you clinically evaluate the case of watering of eye? So first, what we have to do here, you have to examine the eye under diffuse illumination and magnification. So under slit lamp, you have to examine the eye. So and we have to rule out the reflex hyperlacrimation, and we have to rule out the punctal causes of epiphora. With the help of diffuse illumination under magnification, we can observe the structure of the puncti, whether there is a eversion of puncti or doubts I will discuss after the class. So how will you ocular examination with diffuse illumination? With the help of diffuse illumination, there is a reflex hyperlacrimation you have to rule out, and punctal causes of epiphora you have to rule out, and you can observe the swellings in the sac area. Suppose in this patient, here we see a swelling at the lacrimal sac area. So with the help of diffuse illumination and magnification, we can identify the swelling at the level of lacrimal sac area, and we can observe the puncti, whether there is any aversion of the puncti is there, or there is a complete closure of the puncti is present or not, we can observe. And because of the diffuse illumination, there is increased secretion of the tears, that we call it as a reflex hyperlacrimation. So these things can be ruled out with the help of ocular examination under diffuse illumination. So next is regurgitation test. In this test, a steady pressure is applied with the help of index finger over the lacrimal sac area just above the medial palpebral ligament, and we have to observe for the any regurgitation of fluid from the upper or lower puncti. Here in this case there is a purulent the regurgitation of fluid is present. The reflex fluid may be of serous in nature or mucopurulent or purulent in nature. The reflex of mucopurulent discharge indicates chronic dactylocystitis with obstruction at lower end of the sac or nasolacrimal duct. So here the regurgitation test is performed by putting a pressure over the lacrimal sac just above the medial palpebral ligament, and we have to observe the reflex of any fluid from the sac to the upper or lower punctum, and we have to identify the nature of the reflex fluid. Here in this picture it is a purulent discharge. So here the patient is having acute dactylocystis. So first one is by diffuse illumination we have to observe the puncti and lacrimal sac area. Next one is regurgitation test. Next one is fluorescein dye disappearance test. Here we instill 2 drops of fluorescein dye. This is the fluorescein dye, orange colored dye. We instill the fluorescein dye into the conjunctival sac and we have to observe for 2 minutes. Normally the no dye is seen in the conjunctival sac after 2 minutes. If there is a normal patency of the lacrimal passages is there, if it is there, this dye will not be seen after 2 minutes. But if there is any obstruction or due to inadequate drainage of the lacrimal passages, even after 2 minutes also the dye is still present in the conjunctival sac. So the prolonged retention of the dye in the conjunctival sac indicates inadequate drainage, which may be due to lacrimal pump failure or due to mechanical obstruction. So if there is a prolonged retention of the dye in the conjunctival sac, that indicates that is because of the mechanical obstruction or due to lacrimal pump failure because of the atonia of the sac. So in this way we can rule out whether we can identify whether there is a presence of epiphora is present or not. So normally this dye will disappear within 2 minutes of the installation. If it is still present, then there is definitely there is an inadequate drainage of lacrimal passages. So third one is fluorescein dye disappearance test, and fourth one is lacrimal syringing test. Here we instill 4% lignocaine or xylocaine. It is an anesthetic drop. Then with the help of syringe, the normal saline is pushed into the lacrimal sac from lower punctum with the help of lacrimal cannula. We take a syringe and we connect the syringe to the lacrimal cannula. In the syringe, we take around 5 to 10 ml of saline and we push the saline through the puncta into the canaliculi. And if there is a free passage of saline through the lacrimal passages into the nose, this rules out any mechanical obstruction. In this picture, you can see now, after pushing the saline, there is a free passage of fluid into the nasolacrimal duct. So here it is a normal patent lacrimal passage is seen. But if there is any obstruction, it may be partial or complete obstruction. If it is a presence of partial obstruction, the saline passes with considerable pressure. If it is a partial obstruction, the fluid passes, but with considerable pressure it passes. But in case of complete obstruction, the no fluid passes into the nose and it may reflects through the same punctum or to the opposite punctum. If it reflects to the same, here in this case, it reflects through the same punctum, so that the obstruction is present at the same canaliculi or at the junction of the common canaliculi. But here, in this case, there is a reflex of fluid from the upper punctum. We injected fluid from the lower punctum, but there is a reflex of fluid from the upper punctum. Here there is a obstruction at the common canaliculi or lacrimal sac or at the nasolacrimal duct. So if there is a regurgitation of fluid from the opposite punctum, it is because of the obstruction present at the common canaliculi or lacrimal sac or nasolacrimal duct. If it regurgitated from the same punctum, it is because of the obstruction is at the same canaliculi. So in this way, you can rule out whether there is a permanent obstruction or partial obstruction. In case of partial obstruction with considerable pressure, the fluid passes through the nose. But if it is a complete obstruction, the fluid comes out either from the upper punctum or the lower punctum. If it is from the same punctum, it is because of the same canalicule obstruction. If it is because of the opposite punctum, it is because of the common obstruction is at the common canalicus or lacrimal sac or nasolacrimal duct. In this picture, this is because there is a reflex from the opposite punctum because of the common canalicus obstruction. Here, in this case, it is because of the nasolacrimal duct obstruction. This white part is the obstruction. and in this case it is because of the lacrimal sac obstruction. So this is the fourth test for clinical evaluation of the watering dye. And next test is Jones dye test. Here also the main by this test we can rule out whether the watering dye is because of the partial obstruction or whether because of the primary hyperlacrimation. So how this test is performed? Here also we instill 2% fluorescein dye. We instill 2% fluorescein dye into the conjunctival sac, and we take a small bud, like a earbud, which is soaked in the anesthetic solution like 1% xylocaine, and it is placed at the level of inferior meters. So this bud is placed at the level of inferior meters, that is at the opening of the nasolacrimal duct. So after 5 minutes, the cotton bud is removed and inspected. So we instill fluorescein dye drops into the conjunctival sac, and we kept small bud which is soaked in the anesthetic solution, and which is placed at the level of inferior meters. And after 5 minutes, we inspect this. We take out this bud and we inspect whether it is stained or not. Here, in case of, if we consider it as a positive test, if the bud is stained. Here in this picture, the bud is stained with the fluorescein dye. That is, there is a normal patency or normal drainage of the lacrimal passage is present in this patient. But in this case, the bud is not stained, and whatever the fluorescein dye instilled is present at the conjunctival sac only. So this is a negative test. So by this test, we can rule out whether it is due to primary hyperlacrimation. Watering is, if it is a positive test, the reason for the watering is because of the primary hyperlacrimation. So there is a normal drainage of the lacrimal passage is present, but watering is dye is because of the primary hyperlacrimation. If it is a positive test, if it is a negative test, it may be because of, as the bud is not stained, it may be because of the lacrimal pump failure, or maybe because of the partial obstruction. It may be because of the partial obstruction, or maybe because of the lacrimal pump failure. So if it is a negative test, we conduct another test called Jones dye secondary test, or Jones dye test 2. In the Jones dye test 2, again we place a cotton bud at the level of inferior meters, and with the help of syringing, with the help of lacrimal syringing cannula, we inject some saline into the lower punctum. So if it is because of the partial obstruction, with considerable pressure, the fluid will enter into the nasolacrimal duct and it stains the bud. So this is a positive test. If it is a partial obstruction, with the help of syringing, whatever the dye which collected in the lacrimal sac will stain the bud. So this is a positive test. So by this, the reason for the watering of eye is because of the partial obstruction. If it is a complete obstruction, it will not stain the bud. There is a regurgitation of fluid from either from the same punctum or the opposite punctum, but it will not stain the bud in case of complete obstruction. But if it is because of the partial obstruction, and if it is a normal functioning of the lacrimal pump, so because of normal functioning of the lacrimal pump, the dye enters into the lacrimal sac, and with the help of lacrimal syringing, as we put pressure of saline into the lacrimal sac, this stains the bud. Then this test is a positive, and the reason for the watering here is partial obstruction. Whereas if it is a negative test, it is because of the lacrimal pump failure. If it is a negative test, negative Jones dye test 2, then it is because of the lacrimal pump failure. Because as it is, lacrimal pump is not functioning, the dye did not enter into the lacrimal sac. So as the dye is not entered into the lacrimal sac, even after syringing also, the dye will not enter from lacrimal sac into the nasolacrimal duct and stains the bud. So as the dye is not present in the lacrimal sac, in case of lacrimal pump failure, the Jones dye test is negative. So basically, the Jones dye test is used to differentiate between the partial obstruction and the pump failure. Whereas the Jones dye test 1 is helps in differentiate between the primary hyperlacrimation from the epiphora, that is because of the partial obstruction or lacrimal pump failure. So this is about the Jones dye test. We consider this test as a positive when it stains the bud. The first test the Jones dye test 1 is considered positive when it stains the but without lacrimal syringing. The Jones dye test 2 is considered positive when it stains the bud with lacrimal syringing in case of partial obstruction. Here the without lacrimal syringing also it stains the bud because of the primary hyperlacrimation. We consider that Jones dye test negative if it doesn't stain the bud, and we consider that Jones dye test 2 negative if it doesn't stain the bud even after syringing. So as it doesn't stain the bud in Jones dye test 1, the reason might be because of the partial obstruction or lacrimal pump failure. Whereas in case of Jones dye test 2, as we putting considerable pressure, even after that it is not staining the dye, then it is because of the lacrimal pump failure, not because of the partial obstruction. Because if it is a partial obstruction with considerable pressure, whatever the dye which entered into the lacrimal sac will stain the bud. But in Jones dye test negative test, Jones dye test 2 negative test, it doesn't stain the bud because of the lacrimal pump failure, the dye did not enter into the lacrimal sac and did not stain the bud. So this is about the Jones dye test 2. So here, so unstained cotton bud, that is negative test, indicates either a partial obstruction or due to failure of the lacrimal pump mechanism. So to differentiate between these two conditions, the Jones dye test 2 or Jones secondary test is conducted. Here the cotton bud is again placed in the inferior meatus and lacrimal syringing is performed. A positive test suggests that the dye was present in the sac but could not reach the nose due to partial obstruction. So negative test indicates presence of lacrimal pump failure. So other method of clinical evaluation of watering eye is diachrocystography. It is evaluated in patients with a mechanical obstruction. With the help of diachrocystography, the exact site, nature and extent of the block can be identified. It also gives the information about the mucosa of the sac, whether there is any presence of any fistula, diverticula, stone or tumor can be identified with the help of diachrocystography. Here the radio opaque material called lipoidal or pantopaque or dinosol or chondrite 280 is used. It is pushed into the sac with the help of lacrimal syringing cannula, and X-rays are taken after every 5 minutes for 30 minutes. So this radio opaque material are injected into the lacrimal with the help of lacrimal syringing cannula into the lacrimal sac, and the X-rays are taken every 5 minutes for 30 minutes. So in this X-ray you can see this is the nasolacrimal passage. Here there is this white part is there. This is a radio opaque material which we injected. Here we see complete filling of the lacrimal passages from the lacrimal sac to the nasolacrimal duct. This is a normal picture. Whether in this case, in the right side there is obstruction here. Because of that there is a incomplete filling up to the lacrimal sac only in the right side, but in the left side it is the lacrimal sac, the lacrimal passage is adequate and the dye is passing into the nasolacrimal duct. So this is abnormal picture. Here there is a obstruction and there is an incomplete filling here in the right side. Left side it is normal. So basically the X-rays are taken every 5 minutes after injecting the radio opaque material into the lacrimal sac with the help of lacrimal syringing cannula. So the last one is radionuclide diachrocystography or lacrimal scintillography. This is also non-invasive technique. It helps in assessing the functioning and efficiency of the lacrimal drainage. Here, instead of radio opaque material, we instill radioactive tracer like sulfur collide or technetium is instilled into the conjunctival sac, and the passage of this radioactive tracer through the lacrimal drainage is visualized with the help of gamma cameras. With the help of gamma cameras, this is a radioactive tracer which instilled into the conjunctival sac. With the help of gamma cameras, we can identify the passage of this radioactive material. Here in the right side it is normal, and in the left side there is obstruction. That's why there is an incomplete filling of the radioactive tracer. This is about lacrimal scintillography. So these are the different ways of clinically evaluating the watering eye. What are the first one is under diffuse illumination, we observe the punctum and swellings at the lacrimal sac area under magnification, and we can rule out with the help of this we can rule out the hyperlacrimation, epiphora and lacrimal sac, any inflammatory or infective conditions on the lacrimal sac area. The second one is regurgitation. We put a steady pressure at the help of index finger above the medial palpebral ligament. And third one is lacrimal syringing test. With this test we can identify mechanical complete obstruction of the lacrimal passage. And fourth one is Jones-Wright test. Here we can differentiate between the primary hyperlacrimation and lacrimal pump failure, and partial obstruction and lacrimal pump failure. And fifth one is dacrocystography. With the help of radiopaque substance, we will take the X-rays and we will identify the exact site, nature, and block of the lacrimal passage. And last one is lacrimal scintillography. Here, radioactive tracer is used instead of radiopaque material. Here, the gamma camera is used to identify the normal filling of the lacrimal passage. So this is about watering eye. Coming to the next topic, that is dry eye. So what is dry eye? You may all think that dry eye is nothing but the inadequate water in the eyes, but it is not that simple. The definition of dry eye is, basically it's a multifactorial disease. It also involves the ocular surface. Along with the tear film, it also involves the ocular surface accompanied by increased osmolarity of the tear film. Here in case of dry eye, we see hyperosmolar tear film and there is a inflammation of the ocular surface. This you have to remember. That dry eye, if it is a severe dry eye, it is definitely involved with the inflammation of the ocular surface. So dry eye is not only the insufficient water in the eyes, but it also includes inflammation of the ocular surface with accompanied by hyperosmolar tear film. So this is the definition. Basically it's a multifactorial disease. So what are from where different layers of tears is secreted? From the lacrimal gland, the aqueous layer is secreted, which forms the main bulk of the tear film, and it has the anti-infective properties. And from the meibomian gland, the lipid layer, that is superficial layer of the tear film, is secreted, which helps in, as it is a lipid in dense in nature, it prevents the evaporation of the tears. And from the goblet cells of conjunctiva, the mucus layer is secreted. This mucus layer helps in stabilizing the tear film by converting the hydrophobic nature of the cornea into the hydrophilic nature. So basically this is about tear film and the various different layers of the tears which are secreted from the different glands and cells. So what is healthy tears? Healthy tears is a complex mixture of proteins, mucin and electrolytes. So how this regulation of healthy tears is maintained? It is because of two types, because of the hormonal role and as well as the neuronal role. In the hormonal role, mainly the androgens are prime hormones responsible for the regulation of the lipid production. So normal levels of androgens in the body are important for the production of healthy tears. There is a estrogen and progesterone receptors in the conjunctiva and the lacrimal gland. So presence of normal levels of androgen is essential for the normal functioning of the goblet cells and the lacrimal gland. And these androgens are prime hormones responsible for the regulation of lipid production. So they are also important for the normal secretion of the lipid layer of the tears. So second one is neuronal. There are various nerve fibers adjacent to the lacrimal gland and goblet cell that stimulates the aqueous and mucus secretion. So regulation of tear components is because of the hormonal and neuronal regions. And coming to the etiological classification of the dry eye, it is of two types: aqueous deficient and evaporative. Aqueous deficient is because of Sjogren's syndrome. It may be primary Sjogren's or secondary Sjogren's. Primary Sjogren's involves primary Sjogren's is an autoimmune disorder which causes chronic inflammation of the lacrimal and salivary glands, or it may be due to secondary Sjogren's syndrome. It may be because of presence of other autoimmune disorders like rheumatoid arthritis. And non-Sjogren's dry eye is because of the lacrimal deficiency. Because of the aging, there is a decreased secretion of the aqueous from the lacrimal gland, and because of the lacrimal gland obstruction, or because of the graft versus host diseases, or because of the reflex blockage. Because of the decreased innervation of the lacrimal gland, there is a decreased secretion of the aqueous, and that also leads to aqueous deficient dry eye. And certain drugs like antihistaminics, beta blockers, and antispasmodics, diuretics may cause aqueous deficient non-Sjogren's dry eye. This is about aqueous deficient dry eye. Coming to the evaporative dry eye, evaporation is mainly prevented by which layer of the tears? It is because of the lipid layer of the tears. So lipid layer of the tear is secreted from the meibomian gland. So in the lid causes, lid diseases like meibomian gland dysfunction, there is a decreased secretion of lipid layer of the tears, tear film, and that leads to evaporative type of dry eye. So as the lipid layer is not adequate, there is a increased evaporation of the aqueous layer, and that leads to dry eye. And because of the poor lid congruity and dynamics, because in case of lid diseases like ectropion, or in case of old people where there is a lid laxity, that leads to increased evaporation of the tears, and that leads to evaporative dry eye. And because of the decreased blink rate, or because of certain drugs like retinoids. So these are the causes of evaporative dry eye which come under lid diseases. The other category is ocular surface diseases. These are extrinsic causes which can be prevented. The first one is because of the vitamin A deficiency. Vitamin A deficiency will lead to geosis and keratinization of the epithelial tissue, and it leads to evaporative type of dry eye. And due to some topical drugs, because of the inadvertent uses of certain topical drugs which contains preservatives, these preservatives acts as a inflammatory precursors, and it leads to ocular surface diseases. So that finally leads to evaporative dry eye. So, and because of the usage of contact lens, because of contact lens, there is a insufficient precorneal tear film is present, and there is also decreased sensations of the cornea, so that there is a reflex, so that there is a reflex lacrimation is decreased, and finally it leads to evaporative type of dry eye. And certain ocular diseases like allergic conjunctivitis also cause evaporative type of dryness. And there is an influence from the outside environment also, because of the relative low humidity, and because of the high wind velocity, and because of occupational factors like prolonged usage of computers, low blink rate, and continuous usage of microscopes and wide lid apertures, and because of the upgaze. These are all also reasons for the dry eye. So this is about etiological classification of the dry eye. So what are the predisposing factors? It may be because of the aging. Because of the aging, there is a decreased secretion of the lacrimal gland, and because of lid laxity, both aqueous and evaporative type of dry eye is seen. And in case of menopause, there is a decreased amount of androgens in the body, so that as a lipid regulation is because of the androgens, that leads to dry eye. And because of allergic conjunctivitis and environmental factors like low humid environment and high wind environment, and ocular surgery, post-LASIK surgery, there is decreased innervation of the cornea, and it has decreased sensation of the cornea. There is a decreased reflex lacrimation, and because of the medications, there are various medications which also leads to dry eye. So these are all predisposing factors of the dry eye. So what is lacrimal function unit? This lacrimal function unit is very important for the normal secretion of the tears. Basically it's a reflex-based system which controls the secretion of the aqueous, lipid, and mucin components of the tears in response to the environmental stimuli. So basically, the lacrimal function unit consists of lacrimal glands, ocular surface, and sensory motor neurons. So lacrimal glands produce tears, and the ocular surface, which are innervated with the sensory nerve endings, contribute to the tear film, and sensory motor nerve that connects them and maintain the homeostasis. So these three things acts as a unit. That unit we call it as a lacrimal function unit. The normal functioning of the lacrimal function unit is important for the normal production of the tears. So if there is any dysfunction of the lacrimal function unit, results in unstable and poorly maintained tear film that causes ocular irritation and epithelial disease called keratoconjunctivitis. So what are the causes of dysfunction of lacrimal function unit? It is because of the aging and decreased supportive factors like androgen hormones, and certain inflammatory diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, and ocular surface diseases because of the infections like herpes simplex virus, and post-LASIK surgery. So these causes this dysfunction of the lacrimal function unit. There is a decreased tear secretion because of the dysfunctional lacrimal function unit. There is a decreased tear secretion, and this because of decreased tear secretion, the clearance of the debris is limited, and this leads to inflammatory response of the ocular surface that involves both soluble and cellular pro-inflammatory mediators. Because of decreased tear secretion, there is a decreased clearance of the debris, and that leads to release of pro-inflammatory mediators like cytokines, there is a activation of the T cells, and this finally leads to pathogenesis of the keratoconjunctivitis. Keratoconjunctivitis is nothing but the aqueous deficient dry eye. So in the healthy eye, there is an ocular surface is present normal ocular, because of the normal production of tears. The ocular surface is maintained normally because the normal ocular surface it stimulates the nerve system. From the nerve system, there is a secretomotor nerve impulses which activates the lacrimal gland, and this lacrimal gland produces the normal amount of tears. So this functions as a neuronal feedback loop. So normal tearing depends on this neuronal feedback loop. So normal ocular surface in turn stimulates the CNS system. The CNS system in turn stimulates the lacrimal gland to secrete the normal tears. So this neuronal feedback loop is important for the normal healthy eye. So what happens in case of dry eye? Because of the inadequate tears, there is a inflammatory changes in the ocular surface. So because of these cytokines, this disrupts the normal stimulation of the CNS. This in turn interrupts the normal secretory nerve impulse to the lacrimal gland. So there is a decreased secretion of the tears. So there is a neurogenic inflammation of the lacrimal gland, and there is a T cell activation, and pro-inflammatory cytokines are released into the ocular surface, and finally it leads to inflammatory ocular surface. Here we see the congestion of the conjunctiva. It leads to basically the dry eye also involves the inflammation of the ocular surface. Not only the inadequate tears, the dry eye also has the also leads to inflammation of the ocular surface. So this is an overview of inflammation. Because of the insufficient tear production, it is because of the chronically dry ocular surface leads to increased irritation, and that leads to T cell activation and cytokine release. This causes inflammation of the lacrimal gland and ocular surface, and this finally leads to disruption of the neuronal feedback loop. So in this way, in the dry eye, this is the cycle involved, and this leads to inflammation of the ocular surface and decreased tears from the lacrimal gland. Basically, the cytokines and T cell activation leads to all the inflammatory changes in the eye in case of dry eye. So what are the various clinical manifestations we see in dry eye? The patient will have irritation, redness, burning sensation, and contact lens intolerance, and increased frequency of blinking. Sometimes we also have itchy eyes and foreign body sensation. And because of the inflammatory process, finally that leads to blurred vision, photophobia, and sticky and mucus discharge. These are the various clinical features, that is symptoms we see in case of dry eye. And what are the signs? There is a decreased marginal tear strip is reduced or absent. And in case of meibomianitis, where the meibomian gland dysfunction, there is a frothy discharge is seen at the lid margin, and conjunctiva becomes lusterless and mildly congested, or geosis and keratinization is seen. And in cornea also, because of dryness, we see punctal epithelial erosions, filaments, and mucus plaques. So these are the different signs we see in case of dry eye. So this dry eye in contact lens users is important because nowadays many patients are using the contact lenses. Because of the usage of contact lenses, there is an alteration in the precorneal tear film, and there is a reduced corneal sensation that finally leads to corneal hypoxia and reduced blinking. So how will you manage the dry eye? You basically conduct the pre-diagnostic tests like tear film breakup type. So the pre-diagnostic test first we conduct is tear film breakup time. So in this test, we instill a fluorescein dye, and we observe the eyes in between the interval between the complete blink and the appearance of the first randomly distributed blind spots on the cornea. So basically, we instill the fluorescein dye, and we will ask the patient to close the eye, and we will ask then after closing the eyes, we ask the patient to open the eyes, and we observe the time interval between the first appearance of the blind spots in the whatever the fluorescein dye we instill. Here in this case, this arrows is there. These are the blind spots. Here in this case, we see inferior streak of tear film breakup. This black part is there, in between the green colored one and the blue colored one. These are the blind spots. The time interval between the complete closure of the eyelids and after opening it, just the time interval we we calculate. If the time interval is between 15 to 35 seconds, that is a normal range. If this blind spots appears within 10 seconds of opening the eye, then the patient is having the dry eye. Here in this picture, we see inferior streak of blind spots, whereas in this picture, you see a circular type of blind spots. So if the appearance of blind spot is within 10 seconds, that is abnormal test. The patient is suffering with the dry eye. The second test is after tear film breakup time. The second test is Swimmer's 1 test. Here, a 5 mm into 35 mm strip of filter paper is used. This is a filter paper which is folded at the 5 mm level, and it is placed at the junction of medial and it is placed at the lower pharynxes at the junction of lateral 1/3 and medial 2/3. That is here, lateral 1/3 and medial 2/3. This strip is placed in the lower pharynx, which is bent at the level of 5 mm, and we after 5 minutes we observe the wetting of the filter paper from the bent end. We observe the wetting of this filter paper from the bent end. If the wetting of the filter paper is more than 15 mm, that is a normal test. If the values is between 5 to 10 mm, it's a mild to moderate dry eye. If the value is less than 5 mm, it is a severe dry eye. So basically, we put a filter paper in the lower pharynx at the junction of medial 1/3 and the medial 2/3 and lateral 1/3, and we observe the wetting of this filter paper. Here in this patient, up to 12 mm, there is a wetting of the filter paper, and here it is in the left eye, it is around 9 mm. 9 mm of the wetting. So in the left eye, he is having some dryness is there. If it is in the severe dryness, mild to moderate dryness is seen in the both eyes, as it is less than 15 mm. So if it is more than, after 5 minutes, if the wetting is more than 15 mm, it is a normal test. If the wetting is less than 5 to 10 mm, it's a mild to moderate dry eye, and if it is less than 5 mm, it is a severe dry eye. Next one is Rose Bengal staining. This is also a very sensitive test. It helps in identifying the mild cases of keratoconjunctivitis sicca. Here, based on the severity of the keratoconjunctivitis sicca, there are 3 staining patterns are seen. So this is a Rose Bengal stain. This is a red colored dye, which is instilled in the conjunctival sac, and we observe the staining of the conjunctival sac and the cornea, conjunctiva and the cornea. Based on the staining, the 3 patterns are identified. And the C pattern is seen in case of mild to early cases with fine punctate staining. In the B pattern, the moderate cases where the extensive staining is seen. In case of A type of pattern, severe cases with confluent staining of the both conjunctiva and cornea is seen. So this is about Rose Bengal staining. And grading of severity of the dry eye is based on the dry eye workshop, which is conducted, which grades the dry eye into four levels. It's a level 1, we call it as a mild dry eye. In level 2, we call it as a moderate dry eye. In level 3, we call it as a severe dry eye. In level 4, we call it as a very severe dry eye. So basically, what are the different tests we conduct to diagnose the dry eye? First one is tear film breakup time. We instill fluorescent dye stain, and we observe the interval between the complete closure of the eyelids and the appearance of blind spots. The blind spots may be of the like circular blind spots or like streak one. If it is less than 10 seconds, that implies unstable tear film and dry eye. If it is more than 15 to 30, if it is more than 10-15 seconds, it is a normal. And second one is Swimmer's test. We observe the wetting of the strip. If it is more than 15 mm, it is normal. If it is between 10 to 15 mm, it is mild. If less than 5 mm, it is a severe. And Rose Bengal staining, various patterns are there to identify the severity of the keratoconjunctivitis sicca. And the last one is grading is by dry eye workshop. It graded into 4 types. And coming to the treatment, what is the treatment of dry eye? It is supplementation of the tear substitute like carboxy, like we use artificial tears and lubricant eye drops. The main composition of these lubricant eye drops is carboxymethylcellulose, hypromylose, or polyvinyl alcohol. So artificial tear supplements are given. And next one is, as I said, there is a inflammatory role in dry eye. We use some immunomodulators like topical cyclosporin. They reduce the cell-mediated inflammation of the lacrimal tissue. So So anti-inflammatory drugs like immunomodulated drugs like cyclosporins are given, and there is there is a thick sticky secretion of mucus is seen in case of dry eye. So mucolytics like 5% acetylcycline is also given, so that it decreases the teeth's viscosity. So mucolytics are also given, and preservation of the existing teeth by reducing the evaporation and the decreasing dryness. So we decrease the evaporation of the tears by decreasing the room temperature and use of some moist chamber glasses or protective glasses and punctal occlusion. So what punctal occlusion is one of the cause for watering of eye. So by in case of dry eye, punctal occlusion is one of the treatment modality. So by occluding the punctum with the help of collagen implants or cyanoacrylate tissue adhesives, or by cauterization, or by using argon laser occlusion, we occlude the punctum so that the tears, the amount of tears which present in the conjunctival sac will remain in the conjunctival sac for the longer time. That prevents the dryness of the eyes. Or by by doing a surgery called permanent lateral tarsorrhaphy, also we can prevent the evaporation of the tears. So these are the various treatment modalities used to prevent the evaporation of the dry and decreasing the dryness. But coming to the next one is we have to treat the causative disease. So if it is because of the vitamin A deficiency, we have to give vitamin A, and if it is because of the mebobnitis and because of the poor lid hygiene, we have to give antibiotics like tetracyclines. And if it is because of the lag of thalmus, that is because of incomplete closure of the eyelids, that we have to correct the tarsorrhaphy. And in case of severe dry eyes, serum eye drops are instilled. It is from the autologous serum or from the umbilical serum, and then rarely we will do submandibular gland transplantation. So this is about various treatment modalities of the dry eye. So this is about watering eye and dry eye. So if you have any doubts, you can ask me. Yeah, in case of inferior terminate infection also, there is a chance of inflammation of the nasolacrimal duct. It may also act as one of the cause for this watering eye. So any infective or inflammatory conditions which finally may lead to strictures or narrowing of the canals of the nasolacrimal duct or lacrimal sac, that leads to obstruction of the lacrimal passage, and it also acts as one of the reason for the watering eye. Anatomical cause of epiphora. In the next class, I will discuss about dacrocystitis. Then with that, the lacrimal apparatus topic is completed. So any doubts? Okay, thank you. I'm closing the session.